Well, that vaccine debate is one of the newer fault lines in our politics. There's an older, deeper one, the abortion debate, that reopened this week when the Executive Council voted against family planning funds for organizations in New Hampshire that also provide abortions. We have two counselors here this morning to discuss. Councilor Dave Wheeler of Milford, a Republican, and Councilor Cindy Warmington of Concord, a Democrat. Starting with you, Councilor Wheeler, you've been a pro-life, anti-abortion force on the council for a long time. Explain why you believe it was inappropriate to award these contracts, even if they aren't specifically about abortion.
Well, these contracts simply did not follow the new state law that says no funds shall be awarded to any reproductive health facility. They just didn't follow the law, and they don't comply. So that was the first reason why we couldn't award these contracts. The contracts were not separate family planning services from abortion services. There was 2,000 pages of information given to us, but it did not prove that the facilities would be separate like the law requires.
Councilor Warmington, you were the lone vote in favor of these contracts. Explain your position here.
Well, first of all, a comprehensive health care system is essential to the healthy communities and healthy families in our state. It is absolutely critical that we provide this comprehensive network of reproductive health care services. And to be clear, the services that were defunded by this Executive Council represent 80% of all of the services provided. I completely disagree with Councilor Wheeler. The Department of Health and Human Services conducted an extensive and comprehensive review of these providers and determined that no funds, public funds, were being used to fund abortion services. The Attorney General then reviewed the process and determined that that was a correct process. Councilor Wheeler is incorrect in suggesting that the law requires more. He is simply using this as a means to forward a political agenda, a political anti-abortion agenda. These contracts have nothing to do with abortion services. These are preventative care services, cancer screenings, contraceptive care, sexually transmitted disease diagnosis and treatment, and other family planning services. These are not abortion services.
Councilor Wheeler, we'll let you respond there, but I do want to ask you, if the goal is protecting life in utero, isn't this funding supposed to do exactly that? The abortions aren't going to stop because this funding is taken away, but what will stop is some care for the lower income women and their babies who need it.
The issue here is, will taxpayer dollars be used to subsidize the abortions? So the new legislation says that none of this money in these, that would fund the family planning contracts can subsidize the abortion directly or indirectly. It also requires that proof up front, not a year from now, like the division, was trying to say. And the Commissioner of Health and Human Services admitted she didn't do an extensive service, like Councilor Warmington says, an extensive audit. She did a MIDI on it. And in my opinion, she did a micro audit, if she did anything at all, to prove that these funds would not get mingled or subsidize the abortion funds. As an example, at the council meeting, I asked her, will the same exam room that is used for family planning services on children be used for abortions? And she said she didn't know. And that question is fundamental to whether this money would comply with the new law, and it certainly would not.
And Councilor Warmington, as a follow-up there, we heard at that council meeting that in the process of the audit, HHS did not look at the physical separation issue when it was examining these facilities. We know you oppose the law, but the law is the law here. Why can't there be physical separation?
The law doesn't require physical separation. The actual purpose of the law is to ensure that public funds are not being used to fund abortion services. The legislators created the statutory mechanism to make that happen, and it does not require physical separation. It requires financial separation that has been proven by the audit process, which Councilor Wheeler is incorrect, and the Attorney General testified he's incorrect, that that process actually has to be done at the end of the contract period. But to assuage his concerns, they did do an audit at the beginning, and they found absolutely no evidence of public funds being used to fund abortions. The whole purpose of physical separation would be to ensure that. It has been ensured by a very different methodology, and Councilor Wheeler just simply refuses to accept that. But more than that, Councilor Wheeler also voted against family planning services in our state that don't even provide abortion services. So it makes it very clear that his vote is not about making sure that we protect the health and well-being of women and people all across our state, low-income people, most vulnerable populations that access these services, but to forward a very different political agenda that's going on all over our country. We've seen it in Texas, we've seen it in New Hampshire, with all-out attacks on reproductive rights, attacks against women. That's what's going on here. This idea of the mixing of funds is a red herring, and it is not.
Councilor, if you had read the contract, you will know that every contract requires the physical separation of these services. Even if you think the law doesn't, and the law does, even if you misinterpret the Attorney General's attorney-client privileged letter that he sent to all counselors, he said that the council can certainly interpret the language from the legislature as requiring upfront guarantees that these services are separated, like the statute says, before the funds are awarded. Not a year from now, like others are trying to claim, but both before and afterwards. And it's just regarding some of the services, the public should know that a child, a 15-year-old, with this money could go into Planned Parenthood and get sterilized without parental consent or even parental notice. And that's just wrong. The taxpayers should not be paying to take parents out of the picture.
Councilor Warmington, your response there?
We can spend a lot of time talking about this, but the Attorney General testified the law doesn't require the physical separation that Councilor Wheeler is talking about, and I don't believe he would vote for these services even if they were physically separated, but that doesn't require that. I've been a healthcare lawyer for many years. There are many places where the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services requires certain separation, and it's accomplished in exactly the same way as what the New Hampshire law now requires. With respect to minors accessing services, as it was testified at our meeting the other day, in all cases, when minors seek reproductive health care services, Planned Parenthood and other family planning providers encourage the involvement of parents in that decision. There are certain circumstances where young people simply cannot involve their parents in the decision making. In some cases, it simply isn't safe to involve their parents in the decision making. We are not going to turn away a young woman who is seeking emergency contraceptive care. The idea that a 15-year-old would be sterilized is a total fabrication on the part of Councilor Wheeler. It was testified by the department that it's never happened. These family planning providers don't even provide sterilization services.
Then take it out of the contract then. Why would you put it in the contract if you're never going to do it? That children can be sterilized, that children can access any of these services without parental consent. Take it out of the contract. As a matter of fact, if the Planned Parenthood really wanted this money, they would do their own separation and maybe they'd get their money. But they don't want to do it. Don't blame the council. Blame Planned Parenthood. I call it banned parenthood in most cases. But
I think you do call it Planned Parenthood because that's what you would like to have. But this is a distraction. This is something that's never happened. This is something that never would happen. It's a totally fabricated hypothetical created by Councilor Wheeler because he seeks to defund Planned Parenthood and take away a network of healthcare services that provides protection for families and communities. So just to be clear, by defunding these services, this means we're going to have delayed diagnosis and treatment of cancer, breast cancer, cervical cancer, other cancers. That means people will be diagnosed later in the disease process. They will access care. It will be more expensive and it will be less treatable with more negative outcomes. The Commissioner of Health and Human Services testified that this defunding these services would harm birth outcomes because we know that a comprehensive network of reproductive services creates healthy communities and healthy families. And we also know that it works. We know that New Hampshire has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, unintended pregnancy rates in the country. Also, the lowest teen pregnancy rates in the country.
Counselor.
If Councilor Wheeler is really concerned about protecting and making sure that we have healthy families, then he would vote to support these services.
Unfortunately, we've hit time. We'll have to save this one for the next Executive Council meeting. Councilor Warmington, Councilor Wheeler, we appreciate your time here on Close Up.